Are you looking to join the military but unsure of which branch you should join? Well, don't worry, I got you. I put together something that involves just two metrics: intelligence and motivation. Have you found learning something new difficult and lack the motivation to plan for your future? Well, then don't worry, there's a branch for you. You can join the Army. They don't care about your future either. Have you found yourself scoring higher than your peers on tests you've taken, but yet barely have enough willpower to get out of bed every day? Well, then the Navy's for you, and you don't have to worry. They're going to take care of that pesky willpower problem. Do you find coloring between the lines difficult because you can't stop eating the crayons, or even speaking in coherent sentences in which a normal person would understand, yet you can kill a man through the sheer force of will you have? Well, then the Marine Corps is for you. Don't worry, they all speak in grunts and groans. You'll fit right in. Do you wake up every morning with a bright and sunny disposition, ready to seize the day like it's going to be the best day you've ever had, while also usually being the smartest person in the room of your peers? Well, the Air Force is for you. Don't worry, you're going to rack up all those Purple Hearts with all the paper cuts you get. Can you not get it up unless your significant other dresses in green while you're cosplaying Captain Kirk? Well, then the Space Force is for you.
So keep in mind that my experience is my own only, and I've only ever served in the Marine Corps, but I've served on Navy ships. I've lived on, I've worked on Army bases, and I've spent a significant amount of time on Air Force bases, and I've worked with all the branches of the DoD, except for Space Force. Sorry, guys, but the biggest things that you want to consider when trying to choose a branch are what jobs you want. Some jobs are all over the military. So there's jobs like linguists or like intel jobs and things like that all the branches are going to have, but you don't have infantry other than Navy SEALs in the Navy, for instance. And you don't really have infantry other than special operating forces in the Air Force, but you'll have those in the Army and the Marines. So think about what job you want, do some research, just Google MOSs, so military occupational specialties, or jobs in the Army, jobs in the Air Force, and figure out kind of what you want to do. The other thing to consider, quality of life. In my experience, Air Force bases generally have really good facilities, pretty good barracks. In certain Marine Corps bases, you're not going to have as good a living space, you're not going to have as good a food, generally. And again, these are very broad generalizations. So some Marine Corps bases are really fancy and have really nice stuff, but more often than not, because we are the smallest branch and we have less funding, and the focus is more on warfighting and less on like comfort, we don't have extremely comfortable living situations at every unit. So if you're looking to join the military to basically be a civilian in uniform and get some specialized training in a very technical job, Air Force, Navy, those might be things for you. If you like being on a boat or a ship out at sea and you like traveling, Air Force, Navy might be for you. And ultimately it comes down to, why are you joining the military? Are you joining the military to get ripped out of your comfort zone, to grow, to be stretched beyond what you thought you could do in the past, and become a better person? Some branches are going to do that more than others. Like, you can just see by Googling videos of boot camp for all the different branches. So some branches are going to be significantly more physically and mentally challenging, but that's ultimately going to be up to you and why you're joining. Not everyone joins for the challenge. Some people join for travel or school or education or training or whatever. So in the end, it is what you make of it. So whatever branch you do end up choosing, just keep a positive attitude. Don't become one of these people, one of these vets who complain all the time about everything. Just keep positive and take what you can from the military experience.
It's so funny when people have their stereotypes about the different branches of the armed forces. It's funny, but very true. However, I can only really speak on the Navy and the Army because I used to be in the Navy, if you didn't know. I did 4 years in the Navy. I got out for some time and rejoined with the Army. However, I wanted to join the Air Force. I did want to join the Air Force, like before the Army. Before I came to the Army, I tried the Air Force first. People have their stereotypes about the Air Force. Like I said, there's some truth to it because I experienced it. I wanted to join the Air Force, but it was very hard to even get in contact with the Air Force recruiter. Like, they weren't answering the phone. Like, when I went to the office, they didn't even acknowledge you at the door. They just like, it's kind of like, what do you want? Like, that's kind of like how it was. And then when I went to the Navy, I went back to the Navy because I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back to the Navy. I'm familiar with them or whatever. And theirs was a little better, but it was like, I had to go through this, to be an officer in the Navy, I had to go through this really hard, I forgot what they call it. I think it's called a battery exam. It's a battery exam. I really don't understand the purpose of it. It's hard, and you only get 3 chances in a lifetime. And I failed twice, and I was like, I'm not about to fail that 3rd time because that would be my only chance. So I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna go to try out with the Army. When I went to the Army, when I knocked on it, because they all was lined up, right? It was a shopping center. It was the Air Force, it was the Navy, and then it was the Army, just like that, in that order. I didn't see the Coast Guard there. And you know, the stereotype with the Coast Guard is like, you never see them, and that's kind of true. You really never see them. But yeah, anyway, I actually was gonna join the Coast Guard like way back in 2016, but yeah, it didn't work out for some reason. But anyway, so I went in line. I went to the Air Force, and I went to the Navy, then I went to the Army. And it was so funny because the stereotype was so true. As soon as I rung the doorbell and they opened the door, it's like they welcomed me with open arms, like family. They all stood up and was like, they was just excited for somebody to come in there and join. I'm just like, okay. But yeah, that's why that ended up, and it was the easiest to join. Like, it's true. It's almost like they take almost anybody. Like, it's almost like I can just be coming fresh out of prison and they'll have a waiver for me to join. Like, that's just what it seemed like. But anyway, yeah, the process was just easy. I didn't have to worry about an exam, none of that. I already met all the other requirements. Like, I had the GT score. If you didn't know, you have an ASVAB score and you have a GT score. The GT score is, I think it has to be a 110, I believe, a 110 or higher, to be qualified to put in an officer packet. So I had a 113, so I was like, okay, cool. If you guys are trying to figure out what branch to join, like, honestly, again, like I say in my previous videos, you got to figure out like what works for you. Like, honestly, like the Marines, yeah, they're like the last on the list. I don't know. I mean, it just depends. It depends. The training is harder. So if you're not a super physically fit person, the Marines is probably not going to be for you, and the Army is probably not going to be for you. I would say the Air Force or the Navy. You know, like the boot camp is easy breezy. You don't do as much, you know, physical activity like that. It's not as much. It's not as intense. But whether you're trying to do enlisted or officer, like Navy and Air Force will probably be the easiest. But I don't know how it is in the Navy far as their OCS program, but I know far as enlisted wise, going through basic training, piece of cake. Piece of cake. The hardest obstacle you'll probably have is swimming if you don't know how to swim. I didn't know how to swim. Somehow, some way, I made it. I made it through. There's other alternatives, but like floating and stuff like that. When choosing a branch, I would say do your research. Do your research. Talk to people that's already in it if you know people. look up and see if they have any like Facebook pages and stuff like that. It's really, like I said, you're really not gonna know and get the full experience until you experience it. You know what I'm saying? You're not gonna really get the full effect until you experience it. People can tell you this and tell you that. Just like when I decided to go the Army route, people were telling me, oh, it's like this, it's like that, it's like that. But then when I got in, it wasn't nothing that they said it was like absolutely nothing. But I had to go and experience it for myself. So when choosing a branch, you have the general information of what's the easiest and what's the hardest. So really all we can do is give you a broad answer of, okay, from the easiest to the hardest, it would have to be just the major branches. Let's just say Air Force as the easiest, Navy, Army, Marine. But it's so much more to that, like so much more that you should know. That like that shouldn't just make you join. Okay, this is the easiest, I'm gonna join. Well, I mean, maybe that could help, but there's so much more to it. There's so much more to it, but you just won't know. You're just gonna have to just take that chance, you know. Think about like I said, your goals, what you're trying to do. For a perfect example, there's people who want to be a pilot. They'll think like, oh, let me join the Air Force, not knowing that Navy is not just water, not just boats, ships. Like, they have pilots, because I worked with them. That was my job in the Navy. I was an aviation maintenance man, and I worked very, very, very close with the officer pilots. I worked very close with them. And you can be a pilot with the Navy. You don't have to be a pilot with the Air Force. So that's just one example. So that's why I said you really want to dig deep. Maybe go to each recruiter station and kind of just pick their brain and dig deeper. Find somebody who actually do the job that you're interested in. And yeah, they also have these, like, I don't want to say hidden jobs, but they have things like public affairs. In the Army, they call it public affairs. In the Navy, they call it like mass communications. They have those type of jobs that's like many people don't know about or really talk about like that. More so in the Army. It's a lot of people that didn't even know, including myself, that was a whole MOS. Like, I knew about it in the Navy, but I didn't know that they had it in the Army. Correction, mass communications is a MOS in the Navy, but public affairs is not a MOS in the Army. You have to go to school for it. But after schooling, you work in public affairs while keeping your MOS. So, yeah, it's a lot of information out there. You just got to dig for it. You got to dig for it. You got to ask questions. You got to talk to people before making that decision on what branch you should join. And once you decide what branch you should join, then it's the question of, are you going to do active or are you going to do reserves? That's another choice that you're going to have to make. Nobody can really answer these questions but you. But like I said, you have to base them off of what your goals are and what your circumstances are. I hope this video helped you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. You can leave your questions down below and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have, or you can go over to my Instagram and I answer many questions over there as well. But yeah, I will see you guys in my next video.